Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today. Go ahead and get your lunch. Yeah, I said I'm going to not, so I'm going to go. So while she gets her lunch, we will give you a few announcements, just in case you haven't been watching the announcements and I call them the advertisements in the library. First of all, thank you all for coming to the library, willing to wear your mask, willing to wear your mask after lunch, and just cooperate. It's just such a joy that we can be together even with our masks. And the reason we're doing that is to try to keep people safe. And so it's not because we like to wear masks, but because we all want to try to alleviate some things. And so I want to personally thank you for taking the time of doing that. It's really special because I do not want to spend a year of no programming and no events and no nothing going on in the library. In fact, you'll see in our advertisements coming up that we have quite a few things planned, and I'm so excited because I was beginning to get depressed and like, this is so depressing because that's where my gift is. That's where I love to do things, and we love to plan things for people in the community. I'm not a person who just wants to catalog a book. Love books, love to read them, but I want to share. And I want to share about books and share about things in life with you. So today, of course, we have Violetta Armour coming to speak with you, as I'll always do with you. And she has a bunch of books that she would like to sell and to tell you about. Mike and Wendy Weiser brought her for us and paid for it. And she's a good friend of theirs from Arizona. And she'll tell you about herself a little bit later. But we're really excited to have her come. Because at this point, when we were planning this, we didn't know we could get an author to come at all. So this was really exciting for us. Thank you. Next month, we have Mildred Schindler coming, and she's talking on surviving Hitler, evading Stalin. One woman's remarkable escape from Nazi Germany. And she's from Ellis, and she was a Holocaust survivor. She's about 90 years old. She's well-spoken. I talked to her all the song. Our book club's going to read the book, and we're going to ask her some questions. We're not going to take questions from the floor because I just don't want to take questions. It brings up too many memories. So, but on the other hand, she'll tell us about the last some good questions from the book. But she will be coming next month. And then in November, I'm still working on that. December, we have Kimberly Funk coming, and she wrote the book Christmas at the Stable, and it's all about children, for children, animals that are in the stable. And she does it from the animal point of view. So I'm hoping she'll read this part of the book that she wrote. And so that'll be kind of a nice one. Christmas story. We have ESL classes on Thursday night if you know anybody who wants or needs to learn English. We have someone who does speak Spanish, who teaches the class, but they don't have to be a Spanish speaker. They speak, they know speak another language. So that's each Thursday night at 6:30. And then our book club will be next Monday, and we see a variety of books. And so, even though it's the holiday, we're gonna get together because most of the places we can look at it. We want to get together and talk about a book. We have a science fiction book club, and that's the first Sunday of the month, and it meets at 5. And if you know Katie, call Katie. She does a science fiction book club. And then we have a poetry group, and some of us actually, 3 or 4 of us actually write poetry, some better than others. And some of us just share about poets and have a good time. So come and join us. That's the third Thursday of the month at 2 p.m. And then, of course, Judy starts her story time for the little ones, September 14th. Preschool and proper time, and then family night at 8. She will have her baby last sit, which is for the ages 0 to 15 months. And that's where parents or guardians bring the little ones and you learn to sing to them and read to them and to rhyming with them, and it's a great time. You have to sign up. We have had grandparents when we're there, so talk to you if you're interested. And we're going to have another program, 1,000 books for kindergarten. If you have a grandchild or a niece or nephew, or you have someone in your family who's under kindergarten, they can sign up on VStack, on their phone, or on their computer, and keep track of the 1,000 books that they're going to do before they go to kindergarten. And then Judy has all.
They don't have to be in Colby. We've got students in Arizona that are working on their boat through a grandmother's car.
That's correct. And you know, we beat Arizona public schools by having 1,000 books before VStack and having it on technology. So that was really excited that we just outdid this huge school system. So I was pretty proud of you. So have it on the back when you see it. And if you would like to ride a bike and you don't have one, we have 2 bikes for checkout. All you have to have is a library card and have had the library card for 3 months to be able to see it. Okay? And be about 12 years old. These are pretty big bikes, okay? And then we have a writer's club, and maybe the first and third Tuesday of the month, and you can come and get critiques on your writing or critique others. And then, if for some reason you can't get to the library or you're traveling, be sure and download your digital ebook on your phone or your tablet or your computer, and you can get movies, you can get audiobooks, you can get the PDF type books you read, you can do comics, you can do documentary, you name it, and it's all you need is a library card. And then also Sunflower, we have the audiobooks or the ebooks, and those will be some of the more popular books we actually have to pay for money for. We pay quite a bit of money. So if there's something you want to read, put it on hold, and we'll see if we can purchase it. Okay? And then remember to buy the card if you want to send something in there. It's like $65. If you want a whole bunch more, talk to us and we'll give you the yeah. And then just remember, Facebook is your friend, because that's the first place we go to put announcements up. It's the easiest place for us to put things up. We can put it on our website and we put it on the catalog, but this is always the first place. And so if you're wondering if something's going on because it's snowing or it's icy or whatever's going on, you can check Facebook. Of course, you can always call us too. So, we're always aren't we? If we're here. So, without further ado, let me invite Violetta Armour to come and speak to us about her book, All Over You.
Okay, is that good? Okay, I'm gonna put this down, kind of short. I'll just put it like that. Okay, well, I am so happy to be here, and thank you, Mark and Wendy, for inviting me. Dear friends, and I'll tell a little bit about that in my talk.
Can I say a
Yes.
I forgot in my effervescent way of telling you about what we're doing here. I forgot to welcome James Robin from Senator Moran's office. He will be here afterwards if you have something to say to him or a question you have or whatever. I just want to acknowledge him and welcome him and to say, get together with him and talk to him. And then also I want to welcome Patrick, who's the board chairman, and Mark Weiser, who's the board chairman, and Wendy Weiser, who's on the front board. And I can't think of anybody else. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. If you have questions afterwards, or our gentleman there, he might be more popular than me at the end of this program. But I can answer any questions. Again, I'm just so happy to be here, and I promised Mark and Wendy I wouldn't embarrass them, so I'm gonna try to be on my best behavior. When Mark called me last year and said, would you come and speak to our group about your book? I'm like, absolutely. I mean, when you ask an author to talk about their book, who would say no? It's like if somebody asked you to talk for an hour about your grandchild, wouldn't you be thrilled? And that's kind of how it just becomes your baby. Another reason I'm happy to be here, I remember going to a Rotary meeting, there was a 85-year-old gentleman, and the first thing he says, I'm happy to be here. At my age, I'm happy to be anywhere. So the taller at my age, going up to, I'm happy to be anywhere. And I thank you for coming when there's that year of COVID. The other reason I love speaking to groups about my book is I was a late bloomer. My first book was published in 75, 5 years ago. And so many people come up to me and they say, I always wanted to write a book. I wanted to write a book. Well, you can write a book. If I can do it, you can do it. I think everybody has a story in them. It may be your story, your memoir, or it may be your imagination. But we are all unique, and when we put our experiences into a book to share with others, I found out there's really nothing more rewarding. So I hope my story, with all the rejection I've had that I'm going to share with you, I encourage you to do the same thing. My story begins, well, actually, at the end of my first book, the final scene takes place at a New Year's Eve party in 1999. It's the turn of the century, it's the millennium. And my own writing journey takes place at the same time. It was 1999, it was New Year's Eve. We had a lot of the family over, and I think I had a little too much bubbly, maybe, because we were setting goals for the new year, and my goal was like off the charts. But they were recording it. It was 1999. We didn't have the iPhone camera. We had, what's it called? Camcorders. So, and then the next day I saw it, and I thought, what did I say? I said, okay, this is the year I'm going to be published. I'm going to write a book and I'm going to publish a book. And there it is for the whole family to see, and the grandkids. And so now you're like, oh my gosh, I got to do it. So I had owned a bookstore in Phoenix, Arizona. That was a great experience. It's where I met Wendy. I was so happy that one day she walked into my store, and that was 1991, so I don't know, do the math. I'm not a math, I'm like wordsmith. So I thought, okay, I'm going to write a book. And when you own a bookstore, you read a lot of books, and some of them aren't that good, you know. And I thought, okay, well, you know that. You're like 10 pages into it, and you're like, how did this get published? So I thought, I can do that. I can do better than that. Well, that was a pretty bold statement. It's a pretty humbling experience. It's a lot harder than it seems. But I was working at the time, my bookstore had closed because after 3 years, Barnes and Noble and Borders were closing. They were both within a mile of me. And my lease was up in 3 years at the end of that year, and I was 50 when I started it. So I thought, you know, I'm not going to write this out. If I were younger, I might have tried to fight the big box, you know, like you got mail, that kind of thing. But I thought, I followed my dream instead. So I started working at University of Phoenix full time. So in the mornings before work, I would write. And in the evenings after work, I would write. And it took me a year, and I wrote this book. It's not really that book. It was the first draft of that book. I was very naive to think that you could write a book, a first draft, and it's going to get published. I mean, nobody does that. Stephen King probably writes several drafts. John Grisham writes several drafts. James Patterson. But no, I love the first draft. Okay, I'm done. I'm going to go 5 pages, you know. But here was my initial idea for the book. I wanted to write a young adult book because they say write what you like to read. I love to read the coming of age books. And I made my main character a 16-year-old boy. Now, not that I know what a 16-year-old boy is thinking, but all these writers' conferences I went to, they said girls will read about a boy hero, protagonist. But they won't read about a girl protagonist. So I wanted boys and girls to read it, so I thought, okay, I'll go with the boy. And his name was Teddy, 16 years old. My first thought was Teddy it's kind of a pay it forward thing. Teddy does a good deed. Like maybe pays for the McDonald's, the car behind him or something like that. It's a little thing. But then that person pays it forward, and that person pays it forward. And then it goes all around the community, and a year later, it comes back to Teddy in a really big way, something very meaningful. And he doesn't know that he started this change. Wasn't that a good idea? I didn't do it. I didn't do it. But A year later, that movie, Pay It Forward, came out with Helen Hunt and Jack Nicklaus. And I said, they stole my idea, that was my idea. Well, it was their idea, I guess, but what it taught me is like, have a little more belief in yourself. That was a good idea, why didn't you do it? So what really started to come out of this book, I wanted to show, I've lived in so many different places. Wendy and I were laughing about it the other day, I think I've moved 39 times. Not that many states, but 39 moves. And what I discovered is there's a beauty in every place you live if you look for it. I've lived in a town, I think smaller than Cody, I think it was 500 people in Newmarket, Indiana. I lived in big cities. I lived in, lots of places. And so I think I wanted a theme where every place has its beauty if you find it, if you look for it. I also wanted to show how you can have a lot of different kinds of friends. Teddy was a popular boy in high school, but I wanted to show how maybe he have other friends. And so in this book, Teddy has to move. So that causes him to go from Phoenix, Arizona, big city, to small town, Indiana, probably about the size of Colby. And the reason he has to go is there was a car, this is all on page 1, it's not a thought sport. On page 1, he has been in a car accident with his father. And it was a driving lesson. Teddy is driving, drunk driver slams into him, and the father is killed. Now Teddy has grief, he has survival guilt. The mother wants to move from this intersection because they have to cross it every day. She goes, I can't do that intersection every day. So they moved to small town Indiana where the dad grew up, because she doesn't have any other family. And they have uncles and cousins there. They're going to live in Grandma's big old house. She's a widow and the house is empty. So that's going to cause the change of city to small town. Now Teddy is devastated. Not only has this terrible thing happened to him, but his mother's taken him away from his friends. He's on the starting basketball team. It's terrible. They say, all the writers, conferences, I just said, put your character in a really tough spot. And then the rest of the book is how do they get out of it? That's your story. You know, make it hard. And then when you think it's hard, make it harder. And I thought, well, what could be harder than, losing his dad, and he wasn't responsible, but he feels guilty. Well, first, I think the dad was driving the car first. And back there, I thought, well, it'd be worse if Teddy were driving the car. So that's why I made it so bad. And people say, well, that's such a awful concept to start with. And as I spoke to book clubs, it became kind of a book club favorite. I can't believe how many people told me that story really happened. There was a very prominent obstetrician in Phoenix who was teaching his son to drive on I-17 mountain driving, and he overcorrected. He went over, the father, the doctor died, the son lived. And so sometimes life is stranger than fiction, whatever they say. So anyway, so now I've got this boy, and I'm going to write the story. And it sounds really negative, but he gets through the year, makes new friends. One of his best friends is a little quirky girl named Mindy, and she's kind of a brainiac, which is not anybody, but it becomes his locker partner, it's not a teacher. And it's not who he would have hung out with in his school where he was popular. His other friend is a 80-year-old caretaker at the cemetery, because that's where the dad is buried, and he goes to the cemetery every week to see his dad, and he becomes friends with this caretaker who's 80, and it's kind of a neat relationship that I'll talk about more later. So I tried to get an agent after I wrote this book. Oh, I should share one other story that I remember going to these conferences. They said, put your character in a tough spot. And this is kind of silly, but it caused me to remember. Like, this girl's in love with the guy she really wants to marry. She's found the one. He invites her to meet the family for the first time, and she's so excited. Now, she's a vegetarian, and she gets to the backyard, and they're having a pig roast. So it's a silly comparison, but it reminds you, put your character in a tough spot. How does she handle that? So I tried to get an agent, and finally, in spite of not any rewrites, I get this agent at a writer's conference where they go and you give them 10 pages of your work, and they decided they will represent you. I had her for a year. She was sending the book out to all the New York publishers, and nobody wanted it because This was like 2000, year 2000. They said it did not have the wow effect. Teenagers need a wow effect. They were getting into paranormal and blood sucking and vampires and teen suicide. And this story was more like something in Mayberry, like a Hallmark story. And I didn't want Teddy to be a vampire, so I really liked this kid. I put him in the drawer. I just put him away. I said, okay, I guess nobody wants it. And I kept going to these writers' conferences. And I realized finally, I had roommates, like my roommate, I went to Chautauqua. Anybody been to Chautauqua? It's the most beautiful place in New York. And there was a writers' conference there. And my roommate, Joyce, from North Carolina, she got published. She wrote historical fiction. It was a writers' conference for young adults. She got published. I went to Reno with Sandy. She was a junior high teacher, and it was a Christian romance writers' conference. She got published. I thought, how come all my roommates got published? I'm not getting published. Well, you know what? They can put their stuff back in the drawer. They got it out, and they rewrote it, and they rewrote it, and they rewrote it. So after 13 years, I took Teddy out of the drawer. Come on out, Teddy. And so I decided I was going to make it an adult because I didn't want to change it to be the wildcat. So I wanted to add the mother. This was first person, just Teddy speak. So I added the mother's voice, and I added the dead father's girlfriend's voice, because now they're back in Indiana where the father went to high school. And there's an old girlfriend there. And there's a little something there that the mother finds out something about the dad she never knew. I like books that have secrets, because everybody's got secrets. So now I've got 3 voices, and it's an adult novel. And the pages aren't very long, the chapters aren't very long, because when you try to get an agent, some of them want only 10 pages. The first 10 pages, some want 25 pages, some might go as much as 50, but usually it's 10 pages and a synopsis. And I thought, well, how am I going to introduce all 3 characters in 10 pages? So I did, I made like each character have 3 pages. And later people said, oh, I like your short chapters. I'm like, well, yeah, that was good. You know what I feel like short chapters? Haven't you, like, before I go to bed, I'm like, okay, I'm going to read to the end of this chapter. And when it's a really long chapter, it's you can't get to the end of it. So I got Teddy, I got Mary, I got Rosette, the 3 voices. Where do I want to go from here? To get back into the book, I took a 12-week writing course from Writer's Digest online. It's like 12 weeks to a first draft. And I already done the first draft, but I was improving. And it gave me accountability. So every week I had to turn in an assignment, and I got feedback, and it kept me on track, and I kept going. Now, sometimes you have to have a little good luck. I call it serendipity. My serendipity twice happened with this book. Once was, it took place, I wanted to keep it in 1999 because I wanted to use that New Year's Eve scene. That was really, I really like that New Year's Eve scene. And so that put the father and Rosetta in high school in 68 and 69 back in Indiana. So the middle section of the book is all the 60s. And, you know, we've all lived through it. We remember those tumultuous times, but those 2 years were some of the most historic. You know, we've got Vietnam, we've got the killing of Kennedy, we've got Martin Luther King, we've got civil rights unrest, and we have good things too, like Apollo. So I had so much to draw on and incorporate that into the book. And then it goes back to the 90s. But you have to be careful when you go back to the 60s that you don't put in something that wasn't there until the 90s. My example was the 3-point, it's a basketball interested because it's there in Indiana, and I'm not sure, we got to have picture hysteria. And so there were no 3-pointers in basketball in the 60s. And I had a scene where somebody makes a 3-pointer to win the holiday tournament. Well, no, there was no 3-pointer. And that was one of those things you sit up in the middle of the night and think, oh my gosh, why did I check that? I don't think that's right. And speaking of middle of the night, they say a lot of your inspiration comes when you're sleeping. So if you're trying to solve a problem in your book, think about it before you go to bed, and then it'll come to you in the middle of the night, and keep a notebook by your table, bedside table, and because in the morning it'll be gone when you wake up. So I started doing that, and I would write things in the middle of the night. And in the morning, I would read them. No, I would read them. I could read them. There was, I couldn't read anything I wrote. So as I started getting toward the end of this book, if I woke up with an inspiration or an idea, I just run to the computer, which wasn't that far. My house wasn't that big. And to jot that down before I lost it. And then I would kind of stay there and keep writing. So I almost wrote the end of this whole book in my pajamas. Yeah. So finally, I have this book done, and I'm pretty pleased with it. And now I'm going to find an agent again. Okay. So I'm on 10 pages. So I'm on 15. You can't just send a form letter out. You have to find out which agents want to do young adult, or now it's mainstream adult. What's their criteria? You have to tailor it to them. Well, I was reading an article about Catherine Socket, who wrote The Help. Remember The Help? I've all read that. She said she had 44 rejections. Imagine, 44 rejections with this wonderful story. And sometimes the rejections are not kind. But she said there was one that said, who cares about Black women in the 50s in the South? Well, I bet that agent was kind of sorry they said that, right? Yeah. So she said, okay, 44 rejections. So I told my husband, I said, okay, I'm going for 45 rejections. I'm not going to stop till I get 45. Okay, so I started in September, and I sent out 24 query letters, we call them query letters, whatever that agent wanted. And I only got 8 replies. Now, there are a number of things that happen. Some will say up front, if there's no reply, we don't want it, obviously. Okay, or you'll get a form letter. You can tell it's a form letter, thank you, but we're not interested. But my first rejection was so positive, a positive rejection, that it encouraged me to go on. It said, thank you, you can tell it wasn't a form letter. It said, thank you for sending this book. I'm not able to take it on now, but I think you'll find a home because it has a very strong concept. And I don't even know what strong concept is. I'm like, oh good, I have strong concept. I'm gonna keep going. So between September and December, I got those 8 replies and none of them wanted the book. And I was gonna take a little break over Christmas. And I thought I'll start it again after New Year's. I must have been looking at self-publishing because I was getting emails from self-publishers, which is very prevalent today, but in 2015 it wasn't as much. And one company was having a half price sale. Well, what woman can resist half price? Like buying shoes or handbags. And my husband and I had a joining just, on just met. And I said, maybe I should do this self-publishing thing. It's half price. And I think he was so tired of hearing about this book. He said, just do it. Do it. I will pay for it. It'll be your Christmas present. Just do it. Okay. It's okay. So I did it. I got the thing from last time. Which was libraries and bookstores and everything. And after I did it, I was terrified because when you have a real publisher, or an agent, you have some validation. Somebody says this is good. Self-published, you don't know if it's good, and you lose all objectivity. Once you're into it, you don't know if it's good. I mean, some days you come up the next morning and you look at what you wrote the day before, and I'm sure it's true. And the next morning you're like, who is going to read this awful thing? This is awful. So I took the plunge, I did it, but I was terrified. So it started in January, and we did covers, and we did editing, we did all that. In the summers, and this is where the other serendipity comes in the summers I moved from Phoenix to 2 hours north near Flagstaff to get out of the desert, scorching heat. It's a little community of about 5,000 people this summer. Everything revolves around the country club. There's golf, there's bridge, there's tennis, there's pickleball, anything you want to do. We kind of all meet each other, and we see the same people every day. Well, the ladies' golf league was having an invitational tournament. So there were going to be 50 ladies and 50 guests. And it's a 2-day tournament. They were doing a trunk show, like, one table with jewelry, table with aprons, table with candles. And the lady who was running it said, I know you've got a book coming out. Do you want to sell your book? I'm like, yeah, that would be so exciting. Well, the tournament was Thursday and Wednesday. Thursday and Friday. And as Wednesday, I said, my books aren't here. They're on the way. They're not here. So every day I'm waiting. It's Wednesday. They're still not here. And I thought, well, I'm not going to have a book table. Wednesday at 5 o'clock, UPS gets its last delivery. with 100 books, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So, you know, I get my book table out, and I'm still terrified because it's awful. And, you know, and then I gotta see these people every day. So, I sold all the books. I think because there's nothing else to do in Men's Park, you know, they just bought the books. But here's what came out of that. At that time, my grandson was 13 years old, he was 21. He was visiting me, and I said, okay, now you're gonna be my helper, because I had just gotten that thing that you could swipe your phone with and your credit card. I had no clue how to use it, but he did, of course. He said, okay, you're in charge of anything technical, I'm just gonna sign books. So people started buying the books, and then there'd be a little wall. And Kevin, between that wall, at one point, he put his arm around me. He calls me Judy for Grandma Vi. He said, Judy, I'm so proud of you. Oh my gosh. I just thought, I don't care if I sell another book, I don't care what. If my grandson at 13 is proud of me, then maybe I've taught him follow your dream, you know, what he's doing now, but follow your dream, you can do it. So I thought, this is good. So that was the serendipity, the book's getting in time. Another lady came by, she was a guest, I didn't know her. She walked by and she picked up the book, and you know, she looked at the cover and she read the back, and it was about grief, and she said, you know, I'd like to buy your book, but I can't. I lost my husband, and I just lost my daughter. You know, oh my gosh, I said, I understand, you know, don't have to say another word. She goes to lunch, she comes back out and she picks it up again, and she goes, okay, I'm gonna buy this book, but I'm not gonna read it. I'm like, okay. About a month later, and my email's in the book, and I'll tell you why. And a month later, I did an email from her, and from California, and I didn't know who it was, but she said, I'm a lady, I wasn't gonna buy your book, but I bought your book. I was sitting by the pool, I didn't have anything to read, so I picked up your book, and I want to tell you, I finished it in 2 days or something, and it was the most comforting thing I've done. It gave me so much comfort to go through their grief with my grief. And once again, I had that feeling like, wow, this is what it feels like when your words touch somebody else's, you know, you get that emotion. It does feel pretty good. And then I would see people in the parking lot, and they would say, they'd come up to me and they'd say, I'm so mad at you. I was up till 2 a.m. reading that book. And I couldn't put it down. And I learned those were my favorite 5 words. I couldn't put it down. And I would start crying in the parking lot. I'm like, you like it? You really like it? You know, you like it? You really like me? So it was just a fantastic. So I'm so glad I self-published. Then I started going to book clubs, and they liked it. And based on that, I joined I entered it in a contest, Reader's Favorite. And there's all these categories. So I entered women's fiction, young adult. Now this book that didn't have the wow factor, it won first place in young adult. And I had a 7th grade teacher in Florida send me a letter saying, I'm keeping your book on my shelf because every year I have a child who has to go through grief somehow, it seems. And this is the book I will give them. And my mother, the 7th grader, I donated some books to my granddaughter's school. And one of the 7th graders, my best fan mail, she wrote me a letter and she said, you got that teen romance spot on. Some people don't get it. She did it, and she did a black and white drawing of how the characters looked, which is, I didn't bring it with me. I always like to carry it with me. I really treasured it. So the other thing that happens when you start writing a book, I don't think you know, I think who you are starts to come through whether you plan it or not. I'm a first generation American, and I did not like that when I was growing up. My parents are from Bulgaria. They were the best American citizens you could ever find, but they always spoke Bulgarian at home. But then sometimes they would speak it out in public, and I'd act like I wasn't. I'd be like, I just speak English. I want to be American. My friends, my neighbor's dad, you know, he listened to the Cubbies ball game. He drove a car. My dad stopped brakes and made wine and played the mandolin, you know, and spoke Bulgarian. And I didn't really appreciate that. It wasn't until years later that I thought, I was so lucky to have 2 cultures. I mean, I had that Bulgarian culture at home, and like I said, they were the best American citizens. They became, I mean, they wanted to learn English as quickly as they could. There was no dial 1 for Bulgarian, you know, they had to speak English. And the story I remember, with my grandparents, I was brought up in Orthodox, but we didn't own a car, so buses didn't run on Sunday. We were at the mercy of somebody to give us a ride to an Orthodox church. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. But I went to Sunday school with my neighbor, it was a Lutheran church on the corner. So we go to Sunday school, and then after Sunday school, we got to sit up in the balcony for church service. During one sermon, excuse me, I said I would eat lunch, so I would have broken everyone. I must have been that vodka I had for breakfast. Well, that guy, she's got a lot of hours, but whatever. So it's the middle of the sermon, and there's the pastors at the pulpit. For the sermon, there's a Lutheran flag, and there's an American flag on the other side. And all of a sudden, here's my grandfather shuffling down the middle of the aisle. And that's when people dressed up for church, they wore suits. He had on some baggy pants and a kind of a baggy old cardigan. And I was like, oh no, what's he doing? I didn't want anybody to know his mind, and I was slinking down on my seat. I'm like 8 years old. What's he gonna do? He walks up and he goes to the American flag. I'm gonna tell the story. He picks up the corner of the flag and he kisses it. And he quietly walks back out. And years later, I thought about impact it had to have on people in the congregation, probably more than what the minister was saying. So the reason I'm telling you this is there's a character in this book, Baba. Baba's grandma, and that's who they go to live with. And so Baba tells her story of how she came to America and why she came. And I feel it's maybe, I don't think I ever told my parents how much I appreciated the way I was brought up. They were gone before I really, sunk in. And I think this book kind of became a love letter to them. And I hope in heaven they read it. Because my idea of heaven is a lot of books and maybe chocolate and wine. You're sitting in a big chair with books on either side, right? That's it. That would be heaven. So Baba's little story, it was a tribute. I think it wasn't what I planned to do. Remember, I was going to do Pay It Forward. Baba is the one that comes out. It's a story about racial tension. I grew up in a school, I was in Gary, Indiana. It's a steel town, a lot of ethnic groups. And that's why I don't know why I was ashamed to be Bulgarian, because everybody was ethnic in Gary. I mean, there was the Polish neighborhood, the Italian neighborhood, the Bulgarian neighborhood, the Jewish neighborhood. And my name in Bulgarian is Violetta. And so my parents, we played out in the streets. We didn't have, organized things. We were playing kick the can, and it's dark, and she comes to the porch and she's going, Verica, come in. I'm acting like it's not me. That's not me. I don't want to be Verica. And all my friends know it's me. Well, your mother's calling. So I forgot where I was going with. Oh, so Baba, she thinks food solves all problems. And I agree, don't you? So she's cooking up a storm for this new family that now she's embraced. And so I had some beta readers. Beta readers are people you entrust your book with before you send it off to anybody to say, you're a good reader. I don't want flattery. I want your honest opinion. Where is it interesting? Where does it drag? Does it make sense? And so I had 3 or 4 beta readers, and one of them said, oh my gosh, you've got to put the recipes in the book. Because that's, you talk so much about the food, and they're all Bulgarian recipes. I said, well, I don't have any recipes. I just cooked what my mother did. I never wrote anything down, stuff happens. And she said, well, why don't you just cook and write? Do it and then write. I said, okay, I can do that. Well, I'm not a detailed person. And my daughter, who's an editor, when I told her what I was doing, she said, this isn't going to go well. And I put it on. So the recipes are in the back, but I put a disclaimer. I said, to my knowledge, this is how you cook this. But if you have any problems, just send me an email and I'll straighten you out. So Baba and her recipes are in there. There's a little bit of supernatural, just a touch. And I kind of leave, because when Teddy goes to the cemetery, he puts some music, and it kind of leads him to his father's headstone. And so did he really hear it? I don't know. That's up to the reader to decide. I think it's a things for you. Oh, I was talking about the racial, the Gary, Indiana thing. So we had eight high schools. 4 were all white, 1 was all black, and 3 were interracial. Amazingly, the all-black school was where Michael Jackson grew up. The all-black school had the best athletes, and they had the highest academic standards of the schools. I was in an interracial school, so I saw a lot, and things were changing. And you saw so much, there was discrepancy. Our basketball team was 5 black boys. The cheerleaders were 5 white boys. A black girl couldn't be cheerleader. That was, no. You saw black people not being treated right. And, but we didn't have the courage at that time to do anything about it. You know, the way we drug him. So that, I think that came out of the story too, a little bit. What else do I want to tell you about the publishing journey? Oh, so based on reading that report, my publisher was having a pitch fest in New York City. A pitch fest is where you go to pitch ideas to Hollywood producers and for TV shows or movies. And I thought, okay, now I'm all puffed up. Like, and we hadn't been to New York for a while. We went to go see the World Trade Center museum and everything. So another couple went with us. And this pitch fest, oh my gosh, you have to learn how to pitch your book in 3 minutes, your idea. They call it the elevator pitch. And they work with you in the morning. You drill and you drill and you drill. And it's interesting because like they show you books that if you hear one sentence, you know what the story is. Like Schindler's List or Jaws or just one sentence and you got it. So you've got to somehow capture somebody's attention in 3 minutes. But they drilled us, and they really wanted us to be successful. And after lunch, you go in this hotel room, and there's tables set up with these people from Hollywood, and TV producers and movie producers. And they all look like they're about 15 years old, you know? And then one table had 2 people, and that was really distracting because you go, it's like speed dating. You go to this table and ring the bell, then you go to the next table and ring the bell. And you just keep repeating their little pitch. And the one table that had 2 people was so awful because I didn't know who to make eye contact with. It was so after minutes, I didn't know which one to get. Then 10 days later, you get a report. If they are interested in your book, then you send your book and then they try to take it to the next place. Out of 10, I got 3 said they wanted the book, and then I never did anything else. But you know, things take time because you know Diana Gabaldon, we're watching now, Gender. She visited a bookstore. She lives in Arizona. She wrote that in 1992, and it just came out a few years ago. So I'm still waiting. Yeah, I'm waiting. Now, people ask me about a sequel because I left things kind of open-ended. I didn't resolve everything because I don't think real life is that way. It's not all, well, a Hallmark movie is, and there's no, yeah. But life doesn't always resolve everything. So people said, well, when is so-and-so going to find out about so-and-so? And I had no intention of doing anything else. I said, I don't know. But when I find out, I'll let you know. So people were asking about a sequel, and I decided, yeah, maybe I would do a sequel. I like Teddy, I like Ninja, I like all the characters. And then life happened. My husband passed away very unexpectedly. I mean, we went to church that morning, we had lunch, we had a great day, and at 10 o'clock we passed with an aneurysm. So now here I am in grief. And when I wrote this book about grief, I hadn't really experienced grief. And now I'm feeling grief, and I thought, boy, that would be a different book. So I couldn't do anything for about a year. I just couldn't write. But then I think I started to channel that grief into the sequel, which I wrote. It's called Stand With You. Okay. And I think it was therapy for me. It really helped me. And I didn't finish the New York story. So one of the things we did in New York, we did touring with the at the conference. And we got to tour, you know, that boat ride to go around, called, I don't know.
Staten Island, yeah.
Yeah, and so here we are, we're going around the Statue of Liberty, which is on my book cover, and I think about my grandparents coming to Ellis Island, and the book, it was great. So the next book, the World Trade Center is there, I'm going to keep it in New York. I channeled that grief in there, but here's the best thing that came out of that. Well, one thing that was fun, I'm a real big Jeopardy fan, and Jeopardy is very involved in that book. And I'm glad I got to do it before I was going to pass away, because, yeah. The other thing that was a tribute, I wanted to keep George, this 80-year-old caretaker, and Teddy involved in the sequel. But I thought, how am I gonna do that? He's not gonna go to the cemetery every week in the winter. And George isn't gonna be at the cemetery in the winter. I thought, okay, George can buy a computer. And Teddy would teach him how to use a computer because, you know, old people and computers. And I thought, those could make for some really funny scenes or tragic scenes or whatever. And then, so Teddy would visit the computer. And when he would visit Teddy in the cemetery in the first book, he told World War II stories because he was a Marine. But when he visits him in the sequel, George tells him how he grew up on a ranch in Colorado. Well, my husband grew up on a ranch in western Colorado, and he had the funniest stories. You couldn't even make these up, you know, 5 kids, and you know, it's ranch stories. They're just crazy, like kind of like Woe Be Gone in Wisconsin, and real Rogers kind of things. And I had encouraged him to write those stories down because actually I was trying to finish one of my mystery books. I felt I was taking too much time away from him. I said, why don't you write those stories down and give them to the kids for Christmas, and then I can do my writing. So he did, and I am so glad because we didn't expect that to be his last Christmas, and the stories would have been gone forever. So I used some of his stories in the sequel. So now George is a western Colorado rancher, and he tells his stories. So it's a way to honor Don and Don's stories. Let me see if there's anything important I forgot to tell you. I just have a little cheat sheet here. No. Oh, the Book of Life. I'll say one thing about the Book of Life. Teddy, when he lives with Grandma up in the attic, he finds this old book in Bulgarian, but somebody has translated it. It's called the Book of Life, and it just has little sayings on it. And I try to always do a bookmark with the sayings because I thought that people were highlighting the sayings. So Teddy's reading this Book of Life, and it's kind of, he's struggling with his new school, trying to make friends, and every day he tries to read what it's saying, gets it through the day. So somebody said, is the Book of Life real? And I said, no, I made it up. At one point in my life, when I was kind of depressed, a lot of positive sayings helped me, and I thought, well, it might help Teddy. So that's the Book of Life. It's not real. It's made up. And I'm going to open this up for any questions you might have. I hope I've encouraged you to do some writing. Just write your own stories. I mean, for your family, they are priceless. They don't have to be edited. They don't have to be published. Just do it. But because these stories deal old, should I talk about the other books? Yeah. I'm going to close this with this because it's about grief. I often close with this poem. If with pleasure you are doing something the other person's doing, and you like them or you love them, tell them now. Don't withhold your approbation until the preacher makes oration and they lie in snowy roads on their brow. For then no matter how you shout it, they won't really care about it or know how many teardrops you have shed. So if you think some praise is due, now's the time to slip it to them. They can't leave the tombstone in their bed. So tell somebody today how much you love them. Oh, still good. Okay, now I'm going to open it to questions, but I'm going to do a little pitch about these 3 mystery books. I wrote 3 mysteries. I went to a mystery writers conference. It wasn't for writers, it was for mystery readers. It was in Reno, and the reason I went is my favorite author was going to be there, William Kent Hoover, who wrote Ordinary Grace. Have you all read Ordinary Grace? That's so wonderful.
So good.
Huh?
It's so good.
It's so good. He writes mysteries about northern Minnesota, where he's from, but this one is a standalone mystery. And I really wanted to meet him. And on the way back, there were no agents there like that had a writing conference. But on the way back, I sat next to a lady on the plane, one lady who wrote like a book a year, published a book a year. She had like 4 kids, had acreage. I go, how do you do all that? She said, well, I put the kids on the school bus at 8, and I go right, and then I get them on till 3 o'clock, and then I get them off the bus. And I'm like, oh. Well, she had a local publisher and told me about her, so I pitched my idea about a Mahjong mystery. 4 ladies play Mahjong, and I kind of based on like the Golden Girls, Ditsy, Betty White, and Clara. Well, one of them dies very mysteriously. The other one thinks it's murder. So she's going to solve the case at an amateur sleuth, and she botches it, of course, totally. But she falls in love with the widower detective, so it's not all that. Yeah. Okay, so that's a Mahjong mystery, but I didn't do my homework. The original name is a Mahjong murder. And I was telling my Mahjong lady friends, I said, my book's coming out, it's gonna be on Amazon next week. And all 12 of them, I had usernames. And so this girl, all she heard on the end of the table was Amazon. So she looked it up, she goes, no, it's already on there, Mahjong murder. What was it mine? Somebody else already had that title. And I didn't think you would check that out, you know. So I changed it to a Mahjong mystery. Now, this publisher said, can you give me 3 books? And I was so eager to get published. I go, yeah, I can do 3 books, no problem. Yeah, 1 a year, no problem. And then, you know, then Don passed away and I couldn't do anything. But my other mystery is a pickleball poison. I'm playing pickleball now. It's my new pageant, and I moved to I downsized to a senior, what do you call it? Retirement village. Yeah, it's like 6,000 homes, so it's pretty big, and we have 12 pickleball courts I play every morning. Well, I got a lot of material from all the weirdos who are there. And so on page 1, again, not a hot spoiler, Esther dies. Esther, she dropped with her drop shot. She had a great drop shot, but she went down too. She's poisoned on the first page. And I used the same characters, Angelina and Guy, who became attracted to each other in this book. And people said they liked that part of the book, so I put it in here, and their romance goes a little further, not too far, but a little further. And then the third mystery is my husband, my first husband was my high school sweetheart. He was a coach, principal, and teacher, and U.S. Steel had a camp in northern Indiana, off the shores of Michigan, called Violetta. And there were 5 weeks of girls, 5 weeks of boys, ages 7 to 14, and a staff of 30. And he asked if he would supervise that. So we did that for 3 years. We lived on site. It was 40 acres of wooded land. It was just beautiful. You know, I said, it's so screwed. So that was my other mystery. S'mores can't be dead. Yeah. So, and it doesn't have a couple of them. So somebody, Melanie mentioned my books to sell. It's okay if you don't buy one. It's okay. You can slip out the back door. I will get you on the way out to the parking lot. I mean, I don't want to take these books back to people. Oh, I have to apologize. This is the book I talk about. And I thought I had 25 copies of it, and when I opened the box, it was not. It was the sequel. My dad, because then it was too late to order them to get them here in time. But they're all on Amazon. But I did read the mysteries, and I sell everything for $10, which is pretty much my cost. I don't do this to make a living. Thank goodness I would starve, and I would be thin, so that would be good. But because I don't want to take them back to Phoenix, if you buy 3 mysteries instead of $10 a piece, the whole package for $25. No one can resist a sale. I say it's free, the autograp's $10. Because it's going to be famous someday, right? So I guess I'm done. Do you have questions? Any questions you have? I've heard it talk so much, you don't have anything to say else, right? I have 4 copies of it, so if you're first in line, you get one. I have 4 copies of this one and the sequel, and they are here for life. Which I shouldn't tell you because they won't write, but no, they're not here for Anything else? Anything I should answer? Thank you for coming in spite of COVID and all that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was just so much fun. Wasn't it just dynamic? They said she was going to leave. So I just trust.
Yeah, I started that.
So thank you for coming, and do come and get a book if you want. And you know, we will have them later. But on the other hand, there are very many fun books that you can read nowadays that are murder mayhem that are fun and enjoyable. I started murder mayhem. I have to have light fun. Thank you very much. And don't forget to see James if you want to ask him anything also.